Okay, we are live. Tim, thank you.
All right, excellent. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Johnson, and I am I'm the chair of this committee, and I call the special meeting of the Measure X Citizen Oversight Committee to order. We are conducting this meeting by teleconference and is being recorded. The agenda for the meeting is on the city's website at www.santa-ana.org. Members of the public will have the opportunity to address the Measure X Citizen Oversight Committee regarding agenda and non-agenda items during the public comments section of the meeting. Even though we are not physically meeting together, please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance wherever you are. So if everyone could stand and do. All right, here we go. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thanks everyone. And staff, if we could call the roll to make sure we have a quorum, that'd be great.
Okay. Hernandez is excused. Cargosian.
Present.
Lewis.
Present.
Lugo.
Present.
Pereira is excused. Landaverdi, Vice Chair Landaverdi.
Present.
And Chair Johnson.
Yes, I'm here.
We have a quorum.
All right, excellent. And like I said at the beginning, there's going to be an opportunity for public to comment. And so this would be the time for the public to comment on agenda and non-agenda type items. Staff, do we have any members of the public who may wish to speak on an item?
We do not.
All right, excellent. And our next item is number 1 on the consent calendar, which is consists of just one item: approval of the minutes from the March 10th meeting. Are there anyone that has any edits to those minutes? And hearing no edits, can I get a motion first and then a second to approve the minutes as presented?
I'll motion the minutes. I'll second.
I'm sorry, was that Nancy?
Perfect, thank you.
I'm sorry, was Abby that motion?
I motioned first and then it was Lori.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Excellent. Is any further discussion? If not, we'll have the vote called.
Hernandez is
if we could call the vote. Sorry, go ahead.
Hernandez is excused. Cargosian.
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Lugo.
Aye.
Pereira is excused. Vice Chair Landaverdi
Aye.
and Chair Johnson.
I'm also an aye.
Motion passes.
All right, excellent, thank you. And let's see, our next item on the agenda is from the business calendar, which consists of our fiscal year 21-22 upcoming budget overview by Director Downs. And so I'll let you take it away.
Okay, very good. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
And you can see the PowerPoint presentation, yes?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, excellent. So good evening, committee members. This is an informational update with a recommendation to receive and file. So here is an overview of the budget process this year. The committee's recommendations went to City Council on May 4th. The City Council closed its public hearing on June 3rd, and we expect the City Council will adopt the budget ordinance on June 15th, in time for the beginning of the new fiscal year on July 1st. This is a summary of the fiscal year 21-22 general fund budget. The city council's changes are included in these figures. Staff estimates a general fund balance of $71.2 million at June 30th, 2021. So this includes $13 million that's available and the reserve of $58.2 million. The adopted budget includes using $12.6 million of that available $13 million balance. The highlights for the general fund budget this year is we are assuming a partial revenue recovery from the pandemic. We maintain service levels. There were no additions to the police budget, only contractually required growth for their budget. The hiring freeze was reduced from 47 to 32 full-time positions, and 6 full-time positions were added. That includes a Vietnamese community liaison. The train station subsidy is now permanent. Last year it was one time, but we realized that it needed to be permanent going forward. Mandated redistricting cost is included, and new funding is included for the Park Ambassador Program. There is one-time funding for arts and culture event sponsorships. The Legal Defense Fund was increased from $200,000 to $300,000. And the charter amendments ballot measure that was discussed by the City Council is expected to be on the November 2022 budget. So the cost of that ballot measure will not impact our 21-22 budget. Some impacts that we expect for the general fund in the future. The revived Santa Ana spending plan is scheduled for appropriation on July 6th. This would be the spending plan that is funded with the American Rescue Plan Act dollars allocated to the city. Pension debt refinancing is expected this fall. The police facility debt payoff occurs in 2024. Revenue from the final jail module will come in at some point in time, and that is contingent on being able to hire enough correctional officers to operate that final module. There could be some impact from results of employee labor group negotiations. I know that there's a couple MOUs that are currently being negotiated, and more will be in the future. So I don't know what the outcome of that will be. And there is currently nothing in the budget for any kind of wage increases or anything for 21-22. We will probably look at proposing some increases for our underfunded internal service funds in the future. So an example of that is like building and fleet maintenance. We also have some insurance funds that are in internal service funds. A subsidy for our parking enterprise may be necessary going forward. And then finally, as you all well know, the Measure X rate reduces from 1.5% to 1% in 2029. So those are the things that we can look forward to in the future for the general fund. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I am happy to answer your questions.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So let's go ahead and see if anyone has any questions. And so I'm just going to do a walk around based on how I see on my Zoom here. So I'm going to start with Nancy.
Thank you
Do
for the
have any
presentation.
questions?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
All right. And how about Lori Cargosian?
No questions. Thank you.
And member Lugo Alonso, you have any questions?
No questions for me. Thank you.
All right, excellent. And about Vice Chair Landaverde?
Just one question. Catherine, I know you said the legal defense increased from what number to what number was it? Sorry.
It was in the budget at 200,000. It was
200.
increased to 300,000.
Okay, perfect. That was my only question. Thank you.
Excellent. And let's see, I think that's everyone. I also have a couple questions here. Let's see where they go. What is the Parks Ambassador Program? Can I get just a a very high level? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming that's under Parks and Rec, but can you give a high level view of what that is?
It's part-time staffing, and they will be at parks and park facilities. And I don't know exactly what their tasks will be, but I know it's outreach to the residents and just additional staffing at the parks.
Do we already have that type of a program? It's just expanding on that?
Apparently some time ago, and Sergio, you might need to help me with this. I believe that there was previously a Parks Ambassador program. And so I think that this constitutes a reinstatement of it. Sergio, do you know anything more about that?
Not too familiar with it, but that there was a program, like some outreach. And I believe that's the intent of the Parks and Recs department, to go ahead and continue that outreach and provide those services to community, the new programs, and et cetera.
Okay, excellent. So this would not be years ago we had the like park ranger program, which is kind of, I think, the allied universal, the security. So it's not related with that at all. It's just,
No.
okay. Excellent. And then, so it sounds like, so when we entered into COVID, we had the hiring freeze. And so we're freeing up some of those prior, we had 40 frozen at the time. So we're freeing up 32 of those 40. Are those spread across most of the departments in the city, or is it concentrated in one, or kind of just, again, big picture? I don't need, this isn't how many in each, but
It's
yeah.
fairly spread across the departments. There is a notable exception, police department. So they had 10 frozen. They still have 10 frozen. There was no change there. But as far as the rest of the other departments, it's fairly even. I know that my department, I think, has 2 or something. I think there was 2. Public Works had a couple. Planning had 1. It's pretty much across.
What about enforcement, code enforcement? I think that was one that really kind of got kind of put in the freezer. Did they?
Let's see. I have it right here. Planning and Building Agency. I'm not sure which positions were unfrozen, but I know that they got 4 unfrozen. Okay. So I don't know if any of those are code enforcement or not, but there was 4.
Fair enough. Yeah. And then on I think this was in your future slide. So is the pension debt refinancing, does that impact our 21-22 budget at all, or is that a more of a further looking, forward looking?
We don't know yet. And the reason we don't know is because we haven't finalized the structure yet. We're working with our bond financing team. There is new information coming out from CalPERS that will impact decisions about what to propose for the financing structure. So for example, year to date, CalPERS has a very high rate of investment return. And so depending on where that lands, and we'll get a preliminary number the first week of July, that will impact what we recommend. So the refinancing could be structured in a variety of ways. It could be structured such that we get our first savings in fiscal year 22-23, or it could be structured where we have immediate fiscal year savings. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, and we're still waiting for our court validation. And so in the meantime, we've been working on our analyses, and we'll continue to do so with our consultants.
Okay, great. But so in your current, the 21-22 budget does not, even though that's in the process, it doesn't contemplate any savings, though.
That is correct. The budget is fully funded with the full payment for the unfunded liability.
Okay, excellent. What is the, maybe I should know this, but the parking enterprise, you mentioned, and I just wrote a note on it, and then what is the, what's the future impact on the parking enterprise and subsidies that we are expecting in the future?
Sure. So the parking revenue has been decreasing over the last several years. Even prior to COVID, it was decreasing. And for those of you who may not be aware, we have a parking enterprise for our city-owned garages in the downtown area, downtown Santa Ana. And the revenue that's collected goes to, some of it is for additional dedicated police patrols. Some of it is for dedicated parking enforcement. There's some of it that are contributions to the downtown business groups. There are 2 organized groups operating downtown. And because of the decreasing revenue, we've been seeing this for a while, that the ongoing revenue is not enough to cover the expenditures. The parking enterprise also pays for things like holiday lights in the downtown area, and some maintenance items, along with a contribution to a clean and safe fund. And this year, for the current fiscal year that we're just now wrapping up, there was a general fund subsidy of $400,000 to pay for that clean and safe program, because the parking enterprise could not afford it this year. This is something that normally the parking enterprise would pay for. So we're contemplating a situation where it may be a while before that revenue stream really comes back to life to cover all of the various expenses that it was previously covering. So it's possible that, maybe this year, mid-year, we'll reanalyze and see if we need a subsidy. Sorry, my light goes off. There we go. Yeah, I know. Or, it may be next year's budget, but that's certainly a possibility for the future of the general fund.
Okay, so that enterprise, the parking enterprise is it's a separate fund, and so then in order to keep the the holiday lights and the services that it previously allowed, they have to move some. Essentially, it gets those programs will get funded through general fund if we want to keep the council and the city staff wants to keep them going in the future. Then. So even though it's a separate fund, it really kind of turns into almost a general. If you want to keep those services, you have to fund it through the general fund.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So because I had someone ask me whether that was at all related to the parking issues that we I'll say like residential parking issues that is kind of around our city. Especially in certain neighborhoods, but so nothing to do with at all about that. Okay, perfect. And those were all my questions. And obviously, if anyone has any questions that came up while I was blabbering, feel free to raise your hand so I can see you or speak up. If not, then and seeing none on that. I believe our next item will be from Sergio with item number 2 on the calendar, which is our Major X revenue update. And so I'll turn it over to Sergio.
Hi, good evening, Council. Good evening, Chair Johnson, members of the committee.
You're
Thank you
trying to
very
give
much,
him an
Sergio.
upgrade, Sergio?
I'm thinking of that pension debt refinancing too much, and I just thought of the council. But pardon me, Chair Johnson. Good evening, committee members. Sergio Vidal, Assistant Director here with the city. The item before you this evening is a sales tax update, our recurring item for the committee here, and I'm happy to report positive news for this for this update here. The item before you is positive in the sense that we have received 53.7 million in Measure X receipts to date, and that's also it's positive, obviously, because of the fact that we've been in this this long pandemic, if you will. However, we've seen the resiliency of the Measure X receipts, and especially it's definitely illustrated here with the receipts through May. However, for the 9 months of reporting period, so we do have 3 months to go. Next slide, please. So just kind of reflecting that positive news on a year-over-year basis, Measure X revenues are up 18%. It's largely due to that e-commerce sales, as we mentioned, but also that economic or that positive economic climate that we're operating in, or the Measure X revenues are operating under. You know, going and seeing our car dealers, seeing that stimulus money, those are potentially what are the effects of why we're seeing these increases. However, till we get those details and those facts to what really are the drivers to this increase, staff will be meeting with the city's sales tax consultant in June or later this month to really dive into those details and report back to the committee what exactly is I wouldn't say causing, but why is the city experiencing these increase in revenue? Next slide, please. So next steps, obviously we're waiting for the new fiscal year coming up in less than a few weeks here. Our Measure X revenue estimate for the upcoming fiscal year 21-22 is 65 million. We will be meeting with our sales tax consultant in a few weeks as well. And we're gonna definitely obviously talk about, kind of recap the current fiscal year, project out the remaining 3 months for fiscal year 2021, and also seeing what is that outlook for fiscal year 21-22. So the staff meets with the consultant on a quarterly basis. Definitely in the last 3 months, we've continued to see those receipts continuing to rise. So we definitely will want to know where we're standing for the current fiscal year 2021, and then obviously where we potentially will be at the end of fiscal year 21-22. And if there is a revenue projection estimate change that will need to be made, staff will go ahead and present that for city council consideration, and obviously keep the committee updated on any changes to that estimate. This concludes my portion of the presentation. I'm available for any questions.
All right, thanks, Sergio. I appreciate that. And we'll do the same in terms of if folks have questions. So I'm going to start with. I'll go in the same order. So, Member Lewis.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. No questions at this time.
All right, perfect. And Member Cargosian.
No questions. Everything looks good.
All right, and Member Lugo.
Yeah, I was going to have a similar comment. It's pretty cut and dry. It looks like things are looking positive, and we should see year-over-year positive economic, environment. So I'm excited to see that.
And Vice Chair Landaverde.
No comments. Thank you for the presentation, and just piggyback off everyone else. It's exciting news, so thank you for that.
Yeah, yes, and I agree. It is, we have to remember this is our money that is getting spent in the city, and but I'm glad to see it, especially during the pandemic, that it's that we're seeing that revenue come in. In terms of the, so we're at 54 million through the 9 months. And so obviously just a straight annualization is going to put us closer to about 70 million. Is that 65 million projection? Is that just, us accountants being conservative, or are we thinking that there's going to be, because we're coming out of the pandemic, and, we saw a shift towards e-commerce, and now there might be a little pullback from that e-commerce as things open up, and maybe it's a combination of all, yes, and yes. But am I kind of on the right line of thinking on that?
Chair Johnson, I think you're on the right path. And you're right. It's a combination of yes, yes, yes to the items you mentioned or referenced. Obviously, the 65 million is an estimate that the staff received about 3 months ago. Staff meets quarterly with the consultant. So it is, in this environment, 3 months, might as well be 1 year. So in essence, we're relying on an optimistic, or not, pardon me, we're not the most conservative, but we're on an optimistic revenue projection for right now. However, once we receive that new data, which we anticipate we will in a few weeks, we're cautiously optimistic we'll see those positive trend into the new fiscal year. But you're correct. If everything holds still for right now, based on what Measure X revenues we've received to date, and the last 3 months, if you just add in what we received last year, it will be approximately 70 million. However, unfortunately, sales tax doesn't work like that, or sales consumption, right, or consumer behavior. So we're definitely cautiously optimistic for the near future, the next 3 months, and definitely for the upcoming fiscal year. So in the next 15 months, we'll definitely report back to the committee if there is a change in estimate. But definitely we typically do err on the side of conservatism, but with this 65 million, we are on a little not the most optimistic assumption, but definitely a positive outlook going forward.
I'd like to add to that.
Excellent. That's
One,
great.
not necessarily fair to do the straight line, divide by 9, multiply by 12, because the first 9 months included the holiday spending period, which is always traditionally more than the other months. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's fair to straight line it out and get to an estimate of something like 70 million. The second thing is that, we really got to pick up from the online spending. So as things open back up and people feel more comfortable with returning to brick and mortar stores and maybe reducing their online spending habits, that might have an impact, because then it'll go back to the way it was previously. And then the third thing that I'd like to point out is that the consultant, our sales tax consultant, gives us 3 estimates. And I'm just going to be real honest with you here. They give us a conservative estimate, a most likely, and a optimistic. And for budget purposes, the 65 million is their most likely estimate. So we did not hedge our bets this time and go with conservative. We went with most likely. And again, we will get an update, and I think that because we don't get to see you for a few months, I think it's totally fair that after we have our update meeting with our consultant in a couple of weeks, that we share any highlights from that meeting with the community via email. So it'll be a situation where we'll just give you a few bullet points, and you'll be blind copied on it. If you have questions, you're welcome to respond back and ask those questions, but we'll let you know what some of the highlighting drivers of the revenue are, as well as if the consultant's estimate changed much. We probably would not bring back a change to City Council unless it was very significant. Otherwise, we would wait until mid-year to give them a change in estimate.
Perfect. Well, you, like you do so often, Kat, you anticipated my question in terms of what you bring to council and when. So I appreciate you that color and commentary. I don't have any other comments or questions. Does if anyone else does, start throwing your hands in the air. But and not seeing anyone, we'll be moving on to our third item of the business calendar, which is the Measure X expenditure and update for fiscal year 20 and 21. And I think that again is Sergio. So I'll let you take it over.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Members of the Committee, good evening. Sergio Vidal, Assistant Director here with the city, providing you the fiscal year 2021 expenditure update and also the draft fiscal year 21-22 expenditure report update for the committee as well. Next slide, please. So the expenditures through April 30th, 2021. So we're about a month back. That's our most recent month that closed. Happy to report that expenditures to date are approximately, or through April, are approximately $40.3 million out of a Measure X identified spending budget of 60.9. So about almost a healthy 2/3 with 3/4 of the year already passed this fiscal year. The largest category in expenditure is the unrestricted general revenue purpose, which totals about $29.4 million. And next slide, please. For fiscal year, and pardon me, I also wanted to mention, for the line item, I've also provided a handout, which is identified as Exhibit 3A, which supplements slide 2, which provides the line item detail for the expenditures through date by for each individual cost item within the categories. But slide 3 now, please. So as we're projecting for the remaining part of the fiscal year, and as noted, the expenditures to date are through April are about $40.3 million. And how we see the expenditure pattern for the Measure X identified spending to be through the end of the fiscal year is we did have a revenue loss. Obviously, we just reported the positive news from the Measure X revenues. However, in the city's other general fund revenues, we did experience about a $4 million largely due to COVID. The revenue loss was specifically experienced within our hotel visitors tax, which is the city's bed tax, the utility users tax, or our UUT, and also our paramedic service revenue. So we did see some impact from COVID. It wasn't all positive, if you will, similar to Measure X. So the city did, in fact, experience that loss. And in addition to that, similar to what Director Downs mentioned, is our parking fund did suffer as a result of the pandemic or COVID-19. Happy to report that, the city, obviously, there's been a lot of talk just recently about the city's receipt of ARPA funding, American Rescue Plan Act. So it's the new stimulus bill provided by the federal government. But for our CARES Act, which was the old plan that was received at the onset of this pandemic period, staff was able to identify $5.3 million in public safety expenditures. Those expenses were for Measure X identified line item amounts, specifically for public safety, and specific to that, which is within our police department and also fire department as well. And the total of that was about $5.3 million. Also, in addition, we are anticipating about $9.3 million in accruals through the year end. So our accrual period runs through August, and typically, we get invoiced, a month late, so to speak. So that those accounting rules dictate where we can accrue any expenditures for services that were incurred for the current fiscal year through August. And that amount that we're anticipating is about $9.3 million. And finally, typically, during the year, and especially this year, which was a year that no one really could imagine, but there are some projects that go unspent, or project funds that go unspent, and that's what we call our carry forward. So what we do is, if there is some identified remaining budget left over for fiscal year 2021, those funds will be spent in the upcoming fiscal year 21-22. And we do anticipate that spending to be about $2 million. Again, right now, this is our best guess estimate for the future and where we anticipate Measure X identified spending to land at year end. Next slide, please. So now on to 21-22, or fiscal year 21-22. So the the draft right now, what we've identified for metrics identified spending is about $71.9 million. That includes for fiscal year 21-22 about $10.9 million. So that's really the new programs and services that will be provided or have been identified for and that are eligible for Measure X identified spending. And also want to let the committee know that staff has provided handout item reference as 3B, 3 as in 3 and B as in boy, to supplement the line items for this slide here. Again, the largest category for fiscal year 21-22 will be that unrestricted general revenue purpose, which totals about $42.1 million. Specifically, how we arrived again to this $71.9 million, it's taken in essence the recurring items from the previous two fiscal years, 19-20, and those amounts are about $49.4 and $11.5 million respectively. And then we add in obviously our one-time funding for 21-22 and that recurring amount for 21-22, which is approximately $10.5 million. Director Downs mentioned a lot of those new programs that will be that were identified for Measure X spending. Next slide, please. And new in that, and as mentioned, the new in that fiscal in the upcoming fiscal year is that the largest category will be an unrestricted general revenue purpose. I think there was a comment from the committee is what's the city doing about our planning or our planning and building department? So part of that process is we're gonna the planning and building department, and also in conjunction with our public works, is looking to streamline our plan check and that permitting process. So that, and also the addition of a permit technician is about $600,000 is something that's going to be new for 21-22. Also, $100,000 in sponsoring local arts and cultural events. Some additional administrative support as one of the council initiatives was for that community liaison. That's about $270,000. And that redistricting process. So the city is undergoing, looking to make some changes in its voting process, and to enable to hold that or conduct that process, it's approximately $400,000. And as we noted earlier, additional funding for legal defense fund, so it's an additional $100,000 for the previously identified $100,000 in the previous fiscal year, for a total of $200,000. Park ambassadors, $300,000, and also the continuing our public safety initiatives, increasing, taking into consideration those contract increases. Next slide, please. Oh, that concludes my portion of the presentation. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Assistant Director Vidal. So we'll do our same order with any questions or comments about this. So Member Lewis.
No questions at this time. Thank you for the presentation.
Excellent. Member Cargosian.
Yeah, so I noticed that the projected spending was about almost 72 million, but the consultant's projection was about 65 million. I think it's great that we recovered about 5 million from the CARES Act. Do you think that we'll have opportunities with the American Rescue Plan to kind of reclassify some of the charges? There were a few things I saw identified in the general fund spending because I think it's still unclear what they're going to allow us to use those funds for, but they have said it's mostly to help us return to the service levels. So things like streamlining the plan checks and the permitting process, could those possibly be up for reclassifying?
A great question.
Sorry.
Great question, committee member Karzigian. Right now, you're absolutely correct. First of all, the American Rescue Plan Act, or the ARPA plan, and it's called the Revised Santa Ana Plan. Those guidelines from the Department of Treasury are unclear at this time. However, we are anticipating some updated guidance, and we have been receiving updated guidance from the Department of Treasury to provide more clarification. Specific to your question, impacting the general fund, there is an element within that ARPA plan, if you will, known as a lost revenue calculation. So if the city has experienced some lost revenue as a result of the pandemic, it needs to identify that lost revenue. And then from that revenue, it would need to program out from some of those eligible expenditures from that ARPA plan. There's a little caveat actually within that calculation. So we're working through that with the Department of Treasury and also our advocacy groups. But due to the Measure X revenue, not to get into too much detail into that calculation, but due to the Measure X revenue appearing in our revenues, obviously, during the subsequent years after the time period identified by the federal government, the city hasn't experienced a loss. However, because in 1819, we only received 3 months of Measure X revenue, and in the following fiscal year, the city received 12 months. And the reason we received 3 months is because of ballot initiative, and that was when the city implemented the revenue source. So in essence, in a long-winded way to say, because of Measure X only having 3 months of revenue during the identified period, which was fiscal year 1819, and then that following year, we did have 12 months of revenue, which was substantial, right? The difference was approximately about $45 million. If you take those two years combined and into account in the calculations, the city did not experience a loss. However, if you take out Measure X, there was some revenue loss, obviously, as demonstrated in that previous slide. So at this time, I'm unable to say, hey, look, we've identified this month in losses and we're going to be programming that out. We're going to continue work with our partners with the federal government, and hopefully we can report back the positive news to both the committee and the council.
Thank you. That's helpful. I didn't know that they were considering the Measure X.
Yes, I guess it's fortunately and unfortunately.
That's all for me. Thanks.
Perfect, great. Thanks for your question, Sergio, for your response. And member Lugo, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Johnson. So, yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
There we go. So, Sergio, on the second slide, I want to make sure I understand this correctly because, maybe I didn't have a chance to study the deck before the meeting, but when I'm looking at the second slide, what I'm seeing is a reoccurring cost expenses in 1920 and then reoccurring costs in 2021. I'm omitting the last column because it's very clear that that's telling us how much was spent to date as of the end of April. But walk me through why the reoccurring costs as an example, the unrestricted general revenue is at 34 million, but if it's reoccurring, why is it not showing on 20 to 2021? That dollar amount specifically?
Great.
The 2021 column is the incremental, member Lugo. So it's going to be an incremental increase from the 34.8. So we anticipate covering 36 million plus 37 million by the end of this fiscal year. That's the plan.
Got it.
Yes.
That's what I didn't understand. Okay, so that's it. Those are all incremental increases to those categorical lines.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, and on your third slide, this is showing the dollar amount that was identified to spend, and then the dollars amount that are going to be spent or have been spent for expenditures, revenue loss, CARES, accruals. Remind me, why is the CARES Act dollar a negative versus positive to the accounting line?
Good question, Committee Member Lugo. So that is just more of a formulating. They're all positive in a sense. It just that's the spend down from that top line item of 60.9 million. That just in essence reflects the uses. So it's more of a formatting of the parentheses. But those are all positive in a sense where we've had $40 million in expenses. We've had $4 million in losses. And we've had $5.3 million in CARES Act reimbursement, which was a use of Measure X spending. And finally, the accruals and unspent project funds to arrive at that 60.9 million. It just in essence to demonstrate that we've used up the funding, so to speak.
Okay. So is this saying that, you know, if we're expecting 65 million over the year for this year, am I reading this correctly that we're going to spend not only the 60.9 million, but also at this point, it's going to be the 40 plus million. Is that on top of? In other words, the second deck and the third deck. And I apologize because maybe I'm just not reading it right, but
No problem.
Seeing $100+ million worth of expenditures.
Yeah. So pardon me, if I could walk it through it one more time. The Measure X identified spend. So that's kind of like what we anticipated to spend during fiscal year 2021 is we'll just say the positive or non-parentheses $60.9 million. And to demonstrate the uses of that, the city has expended 40.3, has experienced approximately $4 million in revenue loss through April. And we anticipate that number holding through the year end. And we have reimbursed the general fund for public safety expenditures that were attributed to Measure X identified spend of 5.3. We anticipate accruals, and that would be amongst all our categories of about 9.3 million. And finally, $2 million in carry forward. So in essence, what this slide is detailing is how we're going to use the budget of 60.9 of the identified spend, and those are the uses of of that budget, if you will.
I think I get it. Thank you. So
You're welcome.
at the end, the total amount in deck 2 and the total amount in deck 3, there's going to be a 20-something million delta there that will be spent between now and the end of the fiscal year.
That is correct. Yes. So it's the 40.3, which is on deck 2 or slide 2. And then that $20 million is encompassed by the revenue loss, the public safety reclassification of expenditures, accruals, and unspent project funds. At least that is what is estimated at this time.
Got it. Thank you. That's
You're
all
welcome.
I got. Thank you, Chair.
All right, perfect. And Vice Chair Landaverde.
Yes. Oh, I have a couple questions. So I noticed and this is in your exhibit 3B, just more clarifying questions. I see that there's a line item for the employee pensions contribution, and then there's one also in the unrestricted, the miscellaneous pension. Is there a difference between those two?
Yes. So the city has 2 pension plans, one for its miscellaneous employees and one for its safety employees. So the safety is the police department and the old city Santa Ana Fire Department. Obviously, we haven't been with the fire department for about 8 years, but we still carry that pension obligation through the termination of the Santa Ana Fire Department. And miscellaneous, to give you an idea, is where myself, Director Downs, and Ms. Andrade falls under. We're just considered the non-gun carrying people.
Okay. And then the increase from fiscal year 2021 and then 21 to 2022, is that just you guys hiring more people? And is that why there's okay.
Yeah, well, there's many factors to it. It's the identified increases from CalPERS, specific to our unfunded actuarial liability, or what we commonly refer to as the UAL. So CalPERS provides us annual information, and they basically lock in those increases year over year.
Okay.
And that's what that's representing there.
And
Got
just
it.
to provide a little bit of additional background, a few years ago, CalPERS took action to decrease the discount rate to the plan, which was a planned ramping up of costs for cities. And so over the last several years, our costs have been ramping up according to the CalPERS plan to make the pension plan more solvent, if you will.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And then the last question was in that unrestricted general fund purposes. What is the various, the last line item, 48, what does that entail?
You know what I could do is I could provide a detail of that, but in essence, it's various administrative functions. Some of that is some administrative folks within our department, and also some nominal contract increases. So within our department as well, and others. To give you an idea, we're getting some administrative support in our payroll department and our treasury and customer service, the folks who take the water billing payments. And then there's some contractual increases for some of the initiatives in finance related to one of our revenue measures, which is our utility users tax. And then there's some also admin in other departments as well.
Okay.
I know that the 365,000, that's one time, that's the redistricting cost, isn't it, Sergio? The 365?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for clarifying that.
No problem. Thank you, committee member Landverdi.
All right, excellent. And I don't think I have any questions for you. So I appreciate the presentation, Sergio.
You're welcome.
And obviously also the responses to our questions, because those are, I think, as helpful as anything else. So appreciate that. All right, and so I think that is, staff, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that that's the end of our business calendar. And so, is there anything we've missed? Does staff have any additional comments they would like to make?
Yeah, I do have a couple comments for you. So just as a reminder, your next regularly scheduled meeting is on September 8th. So we expect that the governor will take action to restore all Brown Act provisions, which is the open meetings law here in California, before your next meeting. And so that means that you'll likely need to meet in person. If that is the case, individual members can choose to participate virtually if they'd like to. But we're going to have to revert back to the old rules, or the full Brown Act rules, where if you do participate virtually, you're going to need to post an agenda at your location 72 hours prior to the meeting, and then leave your door open in case a member of the public wants to join you for your location of the meeting. So if that's something that you're interested in, you'll want to definitely reach out to Kristen ahead of time so that she can work with you on making sure that we've got all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted, and that you've got a legal meeting and you're participating legally. But we will give you an update as soon as we know what that's going to look like, well in advance of your September 8th meeting. So we'll keep you posted. More to come on that. The second thing that I wanted to provide to the committee is that committee contact form has been tested and is up and running on the city's website. So I think you've all received your test emails. And just to let you know, prior to this meeting, we did not receive any public comment, but we do know it's up and running because it has been tested. So those are the only staff comments I have.
All right, excellent. Would this be appropriate time to have a follow-up to what you did, one of the items that you just said, Pat, in terms of scheduling? Would it be possible for, and maybe I've just missed this, I just checked my calendar, I did not have like a, the September 8th meeting in my calendar. Can you send out the schedule for the next three meetings or so for us? Because I think that's on the city calendar already.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that.
And when we're meeting in person, will those continue to be 6 o'clock meetings?
Yes.
Okay. All right, perfect. Sergio, did you have any comments you wanted to bring up at all?
No comments at this time. Thank you very much for the committee questions and also feedback. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I hope everyone's safe as well.
Excellent, thank you. So then this will be the time that we're going to wrap up our meeting. And boy, we're going to get right about an hour. I think this is going to be a first for us. And so we'll go, this will be time for committee member comments. So I'm going to start with Member Cargosian.
No comments. Enjoyed today's presentations. Thank you so much. It's really useful to get them in advance too. So thank you, Kristen, for sending those out.
Perfect, thank you. And how about Member Lugo? Oh, let's see. I'm not able to hear.
We can't hear you.
Uh-oh, that's
There-
my
there you
fault.
go.
I'm like double encrypted mute.
Great.
I just wanted to say thank you. No, I echo the comments said earlier. Just thank you for the effort and the time. Thank you for the details.
Perfect. And Member Lewis.
I also echo the comments. Thank you for providing the presentations in advance, and thank you for the wonderful presentation tonight.
Perfect. And Member Vice Chair Landaverde.
Yep, same as everyone else. Thank you, staff. You guys literally do a great job, and I know you guys put a lot of time into this, so thank you guys, and it was a good meeting.
Yeah, and yes, thank you to everyone and the rest of your team. Also, I know that I'm sure that you have some help doing this also, and or I should say, I hope you have some help doing this also, especially this time of year with budget season in full roar right now. And although my gut tells me that you're always in budget season, but I appreciate the presentations and and I think we're kind of getting this. I know I'm getting more and more comfortable understanding it each and every time, but so I appreciate the formats and all that type of stuff. So thank you very much. And I think that is going to be it, unless anyone else has any comments. But hearing none, we're going to adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting on September 8th in this room at 6 o'clock. And as a reminder, if everything goes as we anticipate, that will be very likely a in-person meeting. And so we will see everyone with our smiling faces on all the time. So appreciate it, and that's it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.